after joining FEMA, it's come abundantly clear that it might just be better just to shut down FEMA.
So you work for FEMA?
I do.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I'm not gonna yell.
no. I think you should yell at us. So we're probably actually going to agree quite a bit about this. So I'm not going to give out too much information, but I'll just kind of give a preface of what I do. So I work in the public assistance realm. So I'm not like the immediate response. I'm more on the recovery side. And I've been, since 2020 working on COVID and still currently working on COVID stuff. So, so I know that's coming to an end, but it's kind of shows you how slow FEMA can be. So, but yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
So let's start on the end of like potentially defending FEMA to some degree. When it comes to like in the middle of a crisis, is there a reason? I think I outlined some of it, but isn't it true that there could be a reason why they're hesitant to allow just like anyone in the airspace or anyone to like be on the ground? Because theoretically, they do have a role to say like, well, we can't just let anyone in there, correct?
Yeah. However, the way that they should be doing it is that so they really can't go in and take control over an area. So what they're supposed to do is basically get permission from the state or whoever has the legal responsibility in that area. So if they're getting the okay from, let's say, the mayor of a certain town or from the governor, or there really shouldn't be any issue for FEMA to do this. But the issue that I don't have like inside knowledge of what's going on like on the ground. But if they're not getting that, then they're really outside of what they should be doing, and they should be justifiably, they're in the wrong. There's really kind of no like way that I can defend that action.
Sure.
So, in the disaster world, we usually say that the phrase, the disasters start local and they end local. And the locals are supposed to be in control of the response. We're here to support them however we can. But, FEMA's role really is just we're the money. We come in and reimburse, and we fund things that, normally like smaller towns or the state just can't handle if it's just too overwhelming. So, so if the reports are real, and, I can definitely see some FEMA people, kind of getting on a high horse and, kind of doing this, then yeah, it's kind of not good publicity on FEMA's side.
Yeah, and Intel Wild, thanks for the $5 as I'm putting FEMA on notice. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think my looking at this, and again, it's difficult for an outsider to really get a picture on how logistics works. Of course, there's how things look on paper, but then how they're actually implemented is different. So for me, the easiest comparison I could look at is like, look at the reaction in Florida to the reaction in North Carolina. Now, albeit the situations are different, and I think Florida is probably more prepared for something like this because they see hurricanes to this level, whereas North Carolina probably not. Still, though, it seemed like Ron DeSantis was signaling that, like, I'm in charge, we're in charge at the state.
Oh, yeah.
FEMA's providing assistance. And that seemed to be totally different than the impression you're getting out of North Carolina, where it almost seems like, whether it be a failure of the state government of North Carolina, and I think Cooper's the governor there, or the local people that either through just being overwhelmed or incompetence or whatever, it seemed that a bigger role was being put on the logistical side of FEMA. At least that's what it seems that we're being told. Now, it's hard to know exactly what information's accurate or not, but the impression I'm getting is basically in Florida, FEMA's like, how can we help Governor DeSantis? And in North Carolina, it's almost more like, well, FEMA's running the show. Like, we're running the show in this particular area, and what we say goes. I don't know how much of that's true, but I did, in my head, I'm thinking like, well, wait a minute, what is FEMA's role? Are they, is it like the equivalent like you'd see in a cop show where the local cops are handling the case and then all of a sudden the FBI shows up and they're like, shit, now they're in charge and the local cops are out of luck. Is that the way it is with FEMA? Or is it more like, no, FEMA has no authority to come in and usurp sort of the local authorities? If the local governor or mayor is like, no, we're running the show, we're doing this, we need you to provide assistance here and here. That's their role, not sort of, we're taking this shit over.
Exactly. And there might be some reasons, You have a great description of what should be happening. Is Ron DeSantis in Florida has a lot of experience. They run the show. They don't need FEMA to come in and tell them what to do, and they can say, part of my job is like there's some states that I can go to and I'm supposed to work with applicants. That could be like local governments or tribal or whatever, and nonprofits. Some states we want to be involved in every single call, email, any communication, whatever you do, we have to know exactly what you're doing. And those states have the resources to really kind of put the pressure on us. But some states, if they have no experience with this, some of them, it's like, don't care. Just, let us know if there's something big happening. So that might be the case of North Carolina, is that this is just so out of their wheelhouse that they are just giving the keys to FEMA. Again, I haven't seen that language from the governor or from anyone. It seems like, I don't know. At this magnitude, I don't think North Carolinas have seen something like this in a very long time, or if ever. So in my mind, it could be possible that the governor says, FEMA, just take over, do what it needs to do. I got my first experience after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, and FEMA basically took over that island just because of the incompetency down there and just the amount of corruption that FEMA basically just kind of skipped over the governor there and just said, no, we're taking over the response. We just can't work with you. Just too many people are dying, and the response is so hindered. So, but I don't think that's obviously the case in North Carolina. It might just be out of their wheelhouse. It might just be some people that are, trying to assert some power that they really shouldn't be doing, but it's kind of hard to tell. But really, it's the locals that, if the governor says, oh, FEMA take over, but the locals, the local, like, county says, no, like, get the hell out of the way. FEMA's really supposed to get the hell out of the way.
Right.
It's not their space to go in and, take over the airspace and deny, resources.
It's optically very bad, regardless of like the logistics of what's going on the ground.
Oh,
the way
yeah.
that they've approached it. Because I think you have to understand, no one, even the most professional of organizations, that no one's going to be perfect. And so the idea that even if you could say, look, I know about these disasters and I know what's going on and I know the rationale for it, the average person doesn't. And what they see is there's still people stranded, and there are people willing to be like, we will go help. And they see reports that those people are being told, like, kick rocks. No. And so what people are putting two and two together is, listen, these people, FEMA's not getting the job done. And people are willing to help, and they were getting the job done or would have been doing better, and they're being told to leave for whatever reason. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what's happening, but that's the impression that people are getting. And I think because of that, at the very least, whoever's running like PR for FEMA right now there is doing a terrible job. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. And I think you see this all the time anymore with a lot of these institutions that are rarely challenged, that they're just incredulous. Like, how dare you? It's misinformation. This is conspiracy theories. And it's like, but that's not assuaging anyone's fears. Like, there are people that right now are maybe, of course, there are going to be the Alex Joneses, who I like Alex Jones, don't get me wrong, but he's going to be like, it's a conspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
No matter what. But there are people
love him.
Right. There's people that are more reasonable, but are semi-distrusting, particularly after COVID, of a lot of these institutions. And when it's just like, oh shit, we're hearing reports of people on the ground, instead of like being transparent and being like, of course, we're never going to get anything perfect, but if you did want to help, here's the procedures you need to do. We'll be looking into these claims. Instead, it's just like, these are dangerous conspiracy theories. How dare you? And I think that, like, do they need good PR people at FEMA? Are they not hiring those people? That's not in the budget. We giving too much money to illegals for, to hire a PR person, or what's going on?
I joined FEMA hoping to maybe do some good because I was in the nonprofit, arena first. But after joining FEMA, it's come abundantly clear that it might just be better just to shut down FEMA. It's just kind of, some of the training I've done is you're in these classrooms and, we take, the first day and we're getting our equipment or, logging into our laptops to do stuff. And the instructors have to take an hour, hour and a half, maybe sometimes even 2 hours just to teach the class how to create a folder on our desktop. So that's kind of like the level of like what we're dealing with here at FEMA.
If you don't
And
mind me, this might be a little personal, but if you don't mind me asking,
Mhm.
what are the qualifications? Do you need a high school diploma, a college degree? Like, what are the qualifications to like get in the door to be an employee of FEMA?
Yeah, I think it's just you need a degree, just a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
That's what I have, but mine's in history, and
Okay.
so it's like,
Well, yeah.
but after college, I joined AmeriCorps, which is where I got more disaster
Sure.
experience because they specifically did that, and then I did a Vista year, so I got preferential hiring, and I already networked with FEMA people and in Puerto Rico and some other places that I was deployed to. And they helped me get a job.
And I can
So,
say, this is completely off tangent, but I work with people that are employees
mhm,
of the state or federal government doing home health care because a lot of government money comes into facilities like mine. And so
right.
they'll do audits and they have regulations, et cetera, that are crafted by people that are public employees. They're employees. And I could honestly say sometimes I am shocked at the level of incompetence. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
don't just
Hmm.
mean like, oh, this person doesn't know much about like, history. I mean like your job is managing funds that are going to people with developmental disabilities and you don't know the first thing about it. Like at
Oh
all.
yeah,
You don't
yeah.
know how to manage the funds. You don't know anything about adults with disabilities. And so I can imagine that sort of runs rife through many government agents, particularly as we see the amount of employees they're employing increasing significantly. Like, surely, if you could see, for example, if you go to any high school or college, there's a lot of people there that are getting shoved through the system that aren't probably shouldn't be. And those people are getting hired somewhere. And to think that maybe they're getting hired for government agencies that are responsible for things as important as helping managing crisis relief, it's disheartening.
Oh yeah. Well, for like my piece that maybe FEMA should just be shut down is if you're on. So let's say this is a system that we're working and operating in, and there's an area that really needs assistance just because we pay taxes to the federal government, and then they have to basically beg the federal government to get that money back to respond to their own disasters. And it's unfortunate to think that like you might just get unlucky and just get such an incompetent person to handle your caseload, and there's so many mistakes that could happen and you just lose your funding just because like uh, your FEMA person just doesn't know what they're doing, or it's just so incompetently done that once it goes up the chain, it's just like this doesn't make any sense, and
But
they just deny it.
that certainly has to be the case. And I think also
Yeah.
there has to be a role, much like many of these government agencies, for the people that run it and the direction they want to take things. And my understanding is Mayorkas ultimately is the person that's at the head of FEMA that would ultimately FEMA would answer to him. And we see where his ideological slant lies. So you have to wonder, are there certain times where the priorities of FEMA, oh, it comes to housing illegals? Well, that's a very high priority. And then
Yeah.
like preparation for like hurricane disaster, maybe not so much. So you see these reports of like, well, FEMA had their list of priorities for 2023, and the first one was like diversity, and the second one was some other nonsense, and then the third one's like preparation. Have you experienced like, is there a lot of trainings of like diversity training and things like that you've
Oh
had
yeah.
to go
Well,
through?
just today, it's funny because my dad is a big old liberal, a huge Democrat, and but he's like kind of an old school and just thinks like the DEI stuff is kind of crazy. But today I like to send him screenshots of events at FEMA, and today was National Coming Out Day at FEMA. So it was I got I was I always joke that to my wife that I'm a closeted gay man, so
Yeah.
I will not be joining that meeting. So, but it's like I could send you just this year like 40 invites in our calendars that are about trans or stuff, or it's just all LGBTQ plus stuff, and it's like how many people like they encourage us to put our pronouns in our emails signatures, and we don't have to, we're not gonna, and I don't, because ultimately it's just such a small portion of the public that actually like cares
Mhm.
about that kind of stuff. And like if you're working with like rural Americans in rural counties, I really don't want to like alienate them with
Yeah,
that
and
kind of
that's
stuff. So
yeah.
that just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy at times, and I'm trying to remember some of these like courses because they have their own pride um, email at FEMA where they just funnel tons. Most of my job really is just with all the emails that I get from just the FEMA just explaining what's going on. It's just like managing and putting them into different folders and deleting it. Sometimes I get to like talk to applicants and try to get them money and hopefully I uh, you know they're not lying because I'm with COVID, so it's really like I'm not on the ground there. So it's like it's
You're right.
if they say, oh, we did this, it's like, okay, that's all we need to know. Thank you. Here's your money. So it's like there's tons of fraud I know that's happening, and
Yeah.
even at the trainings that we do, like that's a huge issue that gets brought up. It's just like how is this happening? Because it's obviously that tons of people are just taking advantage of this.
Yeah.
So
Well, I know.
but they just say, oh well, Congress has legalized this, so it's not your
Right.
concern anymore. That's what they tell us essentially.
Right. So I know. Speaking, I won't talk about the specific field, but I know someone who has a security clearance that works in a job that has a lot to do with the government, and the stuff that they tell me, considering the nature of this job and like the potential importance of it, regarding some of this DEI stuff, is insane. Things such as like quotas for promotions. And certain people need to be minorities in positions of authority by a certain time. And, my friend's telling me, like, listen, like, there's just not enough applicants that meet this. So we have to diminish the quality of applicant that we're looking for. And this person's even telling me, he's like, I think the best people I work with are women. The people that I've worked with for years that are women kick ass. They're fantastic. The problem is, on average, not a lot of women want to do this job. And so now we need women. So we're reaching out to people that are blatantly not qualified, but we have to fill the quota. And so we need certain minorities. We need certain, genders. And he's like, this is a huge problem. And he's like, and then people that are motivated that have been here for years are basically like, well, why the fuck should I care anymore? Because I'm going to get skipped over for a promotion. I know it. The quality of my work's meaningless. And that's in addition to all the trainings and bullshit like that they have to take. And the problem is, Scott Adams talks about this a lot. When you prioritize things like that, where you limit the pool of people that you're able to pick from, it doesn't even have to be corrupt. You've automatically ensured a certain level of incompetence. And I think that that's probably going on at FEMA and other places, not just the type of people they're hiring, but also the priorities that they have. And so, there's just so many examples. Like, remember when the Air Force was talking about like, oh, we now have, Air Force suits for pilots that are pregnant. It's like, holy shit, that's your priority? Like, we're closer to World War III than any time since like the Cold War. And that's the sort of shit, we're focused on. But the question I have for you, specifically regarding COVID funds, what exactly are you working on? Are you working on still like getting people like PPE loans, or are there special programs that maybe I don't really know the ins and outs of like people filing for relief whose small business got shut down and now they're filing for relief outside the scopes of those loans?
Yeah, no. So I think PPE loans were. I think those were through banks, and I don't think FEMA really even like dealt with that. But so what I do is it's in the public assistance division that I work under. So there's really just a few divisions. And it's like individual assistance, which is like just giving cash to survivors. Public assistance is working with the state. And local governments, counties, nonprofits, tribal and territorial governments, and basically, like when a disaster hits, there's different categories that we deal with. So, but like essentially, if a building is destroyed by a hurricane, then I'll work with the county if it's a public building under their legal responsibility to repair. We work through a long process of making sure that everything's legal to reimburse them for it. And there's a cost here, so some of it's like on them sometimes, so a small portion. But for COVID, it's the only category that was under operation for public assistance is Category B, which is just emergency protective measures. So that like immediate needs to respond to the event.
Which is
So
funny that you're still dealing with it 4 years out. If it was about emergency
yeah,
immediate needs, like,
well, it's like I have, at the height of it, I had like 25 applicants, and these are like counties.
sure,
I won't name the state just because, privacy. I don't want people reporting me to the certain disaster response number. But I worked with the state directly, and their correctional facilities and stuff like that, and a lot of county governments and schools, and some nonprofit colleges and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I only have like a few left really, and we're basically just trying to close it out. There's just there weren't any deadlines ever, so these people could just take forever. We're at the point now that leadership is telling us, like, basically, get these funds out, or just like, send these projects to the determination memo queue, which is essentially like a legal document. This is just ineligible at this point if you can't provide documentation, and then you could appeal it later if you want. But just because there's so much bad press about the hurricanes, that they kind of just want to re-up resources for that, which is admirable. I think it's time to get over COVID. But yeah, there's still some applicants that are claiming costs, from the very beginning of this, and I feel bad for them, because it's like, they, one specific applicant is, it's really just they have no experience with the government, so they
right,
have no idea what they're doing. And they have to hire consultants and stuff. I think the average cost for one project, for us to process, costs FEMA about $10,000 to $20,000. And just because there's tons of people that work through it, and this is just COVID. If we're actually deployed, I was at training in Alabama recently for 2 weeks, and they gave me a rental car for a couple weeks. It cost $1,000, and 24 people were in that class, and they all got cars. So
right.
it was just 25 grand just for cars for this 2 week training, which is just insane.
Yeah, and it's always the same when you're talking about government money, because it's, I used to tell, like, people, is like growing up, I remember, like, I would open a soda and drink half of it, and then my parents would be like, "What are you doing? That's wasteful." And you're like, "Yeah, who cares?"
Yeah.
And then once you move out and you're spending money, you're like, "Oh yeah, this sucks." Once it's your money, and that's the issue with government money. It's like all pretend to them. It's just like, wow, whatever, we'll spend it. And it's like that with so many things with the government, where it's like, well, shit, yeah. I remember when, this is sort of off topic, but remember there was this Devin Nunes memo about the whole Russiagate shit, and everyone said he was a liar, and then shit got redacted or got sent out by the FBI that proved that he was right, but there was stuff redacted, and those redactions were allegedly there because it protected sources and methods of the FBI, and then a lot of it got unredacted, and a lot of the stuff that was redacted was like, FBI spent $45,000 on this couch for one of their offices, and you're like, wait, what? Like, and that shit adds up when you're doing that agency after agency. I was reading reports. I don't know if this is true, but that like billions were spent this year alone in FEMA on COVID. Now, I don't know if you know that that's true, specifically that amount of money, but I guess the question would be, is the pool of money that you're dealing with to help counties, states, etc., is that coming from the same pool of money as sort of disaster relief for things like hurricanes?
Yeah, so it's all under the disaster relief fund, and I am assigned to a smaller state, and me alone, I've processed probably close to $1 billion, and I'm not the only person on our team. There's several people on our team, and it's a lot of money that we're throwing out this, and it's funny. I wish people could like listen into our team meetings, because like, a lot of us will, openly talk about like, oh my God, like, they're buying these crappy masks, and like, we know these don't work, but it's just like, they're eligible. It doesn't matter how many you bought. Doesn't really matter if you used them. It's if you bought masks, or quote unquote mask. It's just like open eligibility for that, and if it's under $1 million too, it's like they don't even have to provide invoices for this stuff. They could just say, I spent $900,000 on masks, and they don't have to prove it, and it just gets obligated on our end, and that's it. There's, it's pretty simple process, and so, when I first joined that small project limit was 134,000 or something, but it got bumped up to 1 million recently, a few years ago, and it's just like, you can tell that applicants are taking advantage of it. That they'll, instead of submitting like one big project where they'll have to submit all the invoices and stuff, they'll just chop it up into mini projects so they don't have to provide any information.
Right.
And
I remember,
some
yeah, sorry, I remember that like this university
okay.
that I was at. It's a state university, so it's different, obviously, than getting FEMA funds,
Yeah.
but still getting money from the government. In this case, some federal funds, but largely state funding. And I remember they built a new science building, and it has this running through it, this big piece of like copper, like green metal that's running through it. And I was like, why would they put that there? And I was talking to some people that were like involved with the budgeting and stuff for it, and they're like, well, because they had to spend the money. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, because if you don't spend the money, then your budget gets cut. Oh, you only needed $5 million last year. You didn't use the full $10 million. So this year we're only going to budget $5 million for you. So you got to come up with a reason. Oh, well, this building costs $10 million. And yeah, maybe $5 million of it was amenities that we didn't really need, cosmetic and whatever, but we had to spend it because we need an excuse to go back. And I think that that's sort of indicative of what it's like when you're requesting government funds. You have the default presumption is request as much as possible because one, you want the money, but second, because even if you were happy with not getting that full amount of money, now's your opportunity to do it. And if you don't do it now, well, then if it comes around again, or, then maybe next time they'll say, well, you were able to do this for X funds last time, so why do you need Y funds this time? But it's really disheartening, and it's not even corrupt. It's sort of the nature of when you're giving out. But I mean, just think of it. Like, to anyone who's listening, like, think of it this way. Like, let's just say I was like, hey, I'm rich. I'm giving out money based on need, that people that need it. Like, there's going to be people that reach out to me that like really don't need money, but they'll be like, well, shit, I could use $100. Why not? And so that's, I think that, obviously I'm not talking about what you're dealing with specifically, but we saw with like, they're estimating it was like something like 30% of PPE loans were fraudulent. And I know,
surprise me, yeah.
I mean, it's insane. It's like, there were people like, I remember, this is my bias, but I remember watching shows like Judge Judy during COVID, and it was amazing how many people would be on there and be like, yeah, I got my PPE loan, for $50,000, and we went, we went to Cancun and we did this and did that. And she's like, well, what's the nature of your business that you needed this loan? Oh, me and my sister started a business selling braids online. And it's like, and you used the money to go to Cancun. Well, yeah. And it's just like, you're watching that shit, you're like, holy shit, it was really that easy. And
it's forgiven.
That's right. No one gets punished. It's just like, well, it's all fake money. I don't know if this is true, but just looking, I'm looking at Disaster Relief Fund monthly obligations for year 2024. This is supposedly from FEMA, and it says initial 2024 spend plan estimates. In fact, I can put this up. I don't know if you're watching the screen, but I can put it up here. And it suggests
I'm not, but
that's okay. It suggests in September 2024 that what's that? Billions were spent on monthly obligations for COVID-19. So it's saying 3.943 in million. So that would be 3 million or 3 billion. That's just September. The year alone, it has 26 billion and change that was spent. Do you think that sounds about right? Do you think that's sort of the amount?
That sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, from the small state that I'm working in, I still have like teammates that are working on like $500 million projects, and I think my biggest project that I'm working on right now is 58 million, which I think it's, all of it I think is just made up costs. And so I'm really fighting it and trying to get it to.
So help me understand. I'm not asking you to say anything that's like classified or that it will harm you in any way, but I don't understand, like, what's that project look like? Like a hurricane, it makes sense. Hurricane comes through, wipes out building. You're working with the local state government. Hey, it wiped out a hospital. We need the hospital. That I get. But what was COVID? So it doesn't wipe out something like the physical structures. So like, what's the idea that we locked down this municipal building, right? And now it needs refurbished? It needs rebuilt because it was dilapidated because people weren't working there? Did I lose
Well,
you?
so
Oh, sorry.
so what I see it like. No, yeah, I think you cut out for a second, but yeah, I know what you're asking. But so again, this is throughout the whole country, every state, territory, tribe, this was activated. Every county, basically every applicant that applied got eligibility from the states. So it was tons of people applying for assistance under our purview, and I'll just kind of give you like the basics of what I see most.
Okay.
And because obviously, like the places that would most likely need the money is non-profit hospitals or county hospitals or state hospitals that are actively treating COVID-19 patients. So if they can get the documentation to show like, oh, we treated X amount of people and blah blah blah, we'll fund that, and that's a pretty easy project. There's tons of issues now that we're dealing with insurance, and it looks like a lot of these hospitals were still charging these people and charging insurance, and so now we have to go through a bunch of projects to see if there's duplication of benefits. So they're making money off the insurance or these patients, and then also asking for FEMA money because they didn't think that we would be that
Diligent, right.
that concerned about it, but now that's kind of a big issue right now. Those funds like make the most sense. But if a county did non-congregate sheltering, this is another big kind of eligible work. Is if they basically paid a hotel to like house people that were needed that were vulnerable to the virus, like old people or maybe people got exposed and they can't go home because they have kids or something. Then certain applicants can house them in hotels or non-congregate sheltering. The issue with that is a lot of places were just housing homeless people and saying that they were vulnerable people with no documentation to support it. So, but if it was a small project, it's easier to get them through, like under $1 million. But it's kind of chaotic trying to ask like, okay, well, what eligibility bucket are every single person that you're housing? So we saw that food distribution, but people, the school feedings, which isn't eligible, feeding the homeless isn't eligible. Has to be for vulnerable people to COVID, and so, but that got mismanaged a ton. But for like the majority of applicants that I've seen, like schools or county governments or whatever, it's just lots of PPE, lots and lots of PPE. That it's essentially just no eligibility requirements. If you bought PPE, you got it. There's little plastic dividers that you put that people buildings put up. Those are reimbursable from us. Those kinds of things, and extra cleanings if like a library owned by a county needed extra COVID cleanings, we would reimburse that. And that you could their normal monthly budget could be $500 for cleaning, and then spent $50,000 a month.
It's like old.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So
you're paying the contractor $1,000 per nail. Like you hear those stories, like shit. Like that,
exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really does. Like, do you have any idea? I'm looking. I don't know if this is true, but FEMA's disaster budget was roughly $20 billion that was approved by Congress for the year 2024. Do you have any clues? That sound right?
I'm not exactly sure because I don't kind of keep up with the big numbers,
of course. Right,
too much. But that wouldn't surprise me. Actually, that kind of sounds kind of small, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I'm just wondering because if we spent $26 billion on COVID in fiscal year 2024, and they were only approved $20 billion, that seems like, I don't know. The whole thing. I don't know what your feelings were on COVID. I think that the reaction to COVID was worse than the virus itself. Things like disasters, lockdowns, and it's amazing to hear this because until this incident with Helene, I was unaware that so much money was going from FEMA still in 2024 to deal with COVID. And so, to me, it further illustrates the costs that were buried with our disastrous reactions to COVID. We're still paying, tens of billions of dollars out,
right.
and then something happens like these hurricanes, and it's like pockets out. Like, well, what are we gonna do? We don't have money. We've been, dealing with this. So I am gonna have to let you go. Is there anything? Because I gotta get to bed tonight. But is there anything more you wanted to say? Like, that you think?
No, I just appreciate you, Rob. I like your work, and just wanted to kind of give a perspective that I wish you were on some of these calls with other FEMA people because I think you'd be amazed at just like, oh my God, yeah, these FEMA people have like no belief in what the message of FEMA really is or what they're supposed to do. But again, appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. Yeah, see ya.
All right, man. See you. That was great. I'm glad that he called in.